Hey guys, it's Clint Coons here, and in this video I decided to do something different. It was based upon a question I received from someone who was watching my real estate videos. They wanted to know what is the best structure for their Turo car sharing business? So I've got the answer for you right now. Let's get started. Okay, so if you're not familiar with Turo car sharing, it's kind of for some people it's a side hustle where you're actually renting out your car to another party. They come into town, they don't want to deal with Avis or Hertz because, you know, what we saw during the pandemic is they didn't have enough cars, and so there was a real shortage. And so, you know, in situations like that, innovation springs up and people figure out a way in which to solve a problem. And the problem of not having enough cars for rent was to allow individuals, like myself if I wanted to do it, to rent out my car to a third party. And so a platform was developed, Turo, that allows you to do this. Now there's other platforms out there as well that you can sign into and rent your car to someone to use while they're in town. But the problem or the issues that many people have that engage in this type of business is, how do I structure the deal? How do I structure my business so that I'm protecting myself from potential liability? Okay, so what do we have with the sharing business? There's two real issues as I see it. Number one is taxation, right? So I want to limit or have control over my taxes as the income's coming in from this car sharing. And the other one is liability. Right, I want to make sure that I'm limiting my liability to the greatest extent as possible. So if something happens with the car and they decide to sue, that they're not suing me, or if they did sue me, that all of my assets are not at risk. Now, I've seen people do this before. They will set up a business like this. Okay, let's say they set up an LLC, and then they'll put their car in the name of the LLC. Well, that doesn't really look like a car, does it? You get the idea. They put their minivan in the limited liability company, and then they start leasing it out or sharing it out under the LLC's name. So then the LLC is, you know, renters work with Turo. They pay the LLC as follows, and the vehicle's now registered in the LLC name. Now remember, when you have a car, if the car is being leased or you're financing it, then you're not the legal owner. The legal owner is always going to be the dealership or the car manufacturer or the financial institution that is lending you the money. You are the registered owner. It's not the legal owner unless you own it. So in this type of car sharing business, and this is critical for you to understand this, that when you have your vehicle and you put it into an LLC, what you're actually doing is you're going to change the registration from your name down here to the LLC. So you change that at the DMV, so you're no longer listed as a registered owner. Now, why are we doing that? Liability, right up here, right? We want to make sure that if anybody's hurt and they say the car was defective, of course, you can always go back against the manufacturer for things like that, but they're also going to sue the registered owner, which would be the LLC and not you individually. So if you remain on there individually as a registered owner, then you're going to be liable. So instead, we're going to make the LLC liable. All right. Now, that works for some people, but what I prefer to do is I don't want my business where I own my assets. So if I own the assets, so you hear what I said there. I gave you the strategy here if you're a registered owner and you're leasing the car or you don't own it yet. But if you own the vehicle, then it's a different structure, okay? So if you own the vehicle, then you're not going to use this type of structure. Instead, what you should do is you should set it up where it's a dual entity structure, where you have an LLC over here for the business, right? And then you have an LLC over here for the vehicle. So this is a scenario where this individual, they have this truck right here, and they're going to take this truck and they're going to use it in Turo car sharing. So what I would do is, if I own this truck, I would transfer it to the LLC, and I'd make the LLC initially the legal owner on the DMV and the registered owner. Okay, so I'll make it the legal and the registered owner. Then what I'm going to do is I'm going to turn around and lease it over here to my LLC business. So this is my car sharing business on this side. This is the car sharing with Turo. This is the ownership side. So the thing about asset protection, you don't want to own assets where you conduct business. And so this is conducting business right here. So I don't want the car over here. I want the car over here in a separate entity as the legal owner. So now I lease it to this company. Now this company becomes the registered owner of that vehicle. It's no longer the legal owner. I mean, it's not the legal owner because it doesn't own it. It's just the registered owner. Now this strategy is similar to what I just showed you previously, but in a little different context. You see, in the previous example, I said, oh yeah, transfer your vehicle into this LLC, make it the registered owner. If I were to go back and draw that out for you, what you would see is that who is the legal owner of that car that you moved into your LLC? Well, if it was a BMW that you're leasing or financing, BMW would be listed as the legal owner on title, right? Now, why is this important? So you understand how a lawsuit works, how asset protection works. And that is when you do this strategy here and somebody is hurt and they want to sue, they sue the registered owner, not the legal owner. If you could go after the legal owner of the car, then BMW would never finance vehicles because they're listed as the legal owner and they would be sued all the time, every time someone's involved in a car accident. You got to wrap your head around that. So the legal owner, BMW here when you're leasing or financing, your LLC here when you own the car outright, is going to be protected. Why do I want them protected? Because if they sue, meaning somebody that's hurt, and they sue the registered owner, what is the strategy? Don't own assets where you conduct business. If it has no assets, meaning since it doesn't own the car, what can these creditors get? Well, whatever assets are in there, the cash in my bank account, they can get my insurance. What can't they take? My truck. So they can't take my Ram 1500 Platinum Edition or whatever you have. They can't get that. And so what does that mean for you? Well, this company here is now shut down, out of business, but you're still holding on to that $90,000 vehicle that's inside of this LLC. So you could create a new company over here, go back into the car sharing business under LLC number 2. Now, just like I talked about earlier, from a taxation standpoint, the business should be treated as an S or a C Corp for federal tax purposes. So you have control over it. You're not treated as a sole proprietor in this business. I've seen people create LLCs as disregarded entities. Maybe they bring their spouse on, they treat it as a partnership. No. S or C Corp. That's real important from that tax standpoint, so you have control over this. Okay, so that's how we set up the business, right? Makes sense. I've seen some people actually talk about this on the internet. Set up an LLC, transfer your vehicle into the limited liability company, but you're probably going to be hearing this first on my channel unless you're really into Turo car sharing. Here's what's going on right now in the industry. So, individuals that have been engaging in this activity have been doing exactly what I described if they're the registered owner of the car. They take their vehicle here, and as we talked about, they will make this one the registered owner of that LLC. Now they change over the insurance as well, because you got to get this insured under the limited liability company now, because it's a business vehicle. So you have to get a different type of insurance. Well, what happens in this scenario is that the leasing company or the bank is going to get notified because they want to make sure that you're insuring the vehicle. They're going to get notified that you're no longer the owner and that it's now owned by a business. And once that happens, it's going to put into a chain of events that could impact your entire lease or your financing on this vehicle. Because in most of those lease agreements, those financing agreements, they're leasing it to you as an individual, not to a business. Because if they're going to use a business, oftentimes you're going to pay a higher interest rate for that. They're going to do the deal a little different. So when you're taking title, the issue here for the bank is the registered owner. When they see that change and the insurance changes, they're starting to reach out to people now in the car sharing business saying, stop, you need to get this fixed. You need to contact us. We need to renegotiate this. And they're coming after these individuals that have transferred their vehicles directly into an LLC because that is listed as a business entity. So what should you do then to protect yourself? Well, if you want to work around this, one possible solution would be to create a trust. Okay, so this is a personal property trust. I would set up a personal property trust, and instead of registering it in the name of the LLC, I would register it in the name of the trust. Now, by putting it into the name of the trust, the LLC will not be listed as a registered owner. Instead, it's going to be the trust name. And you're not going to create a trust and call it the Turo Ride Sharing Personal Property Trust. I mean, that would just be stupid. It's going to defeat the entire purpose of this. Instead, what I would do is I would just come up with, a name for it, the Seattle Trust, or whatever you want that's just generic in nature. And the reason why is that when these guys look, I want them to see a trust as being on title. What does that then imply? I set the trust up for estate plan. That's part of their living trust, they may think. And maybe you even put in there a beneficiary trust or estate plan trust, whatever you want in the title, to further cement that impression here amongst the lenders. Now, the insurance, you're going to have to change the insurance, and that could trigger this as well. But I think it's a good stopgap in these situations, that when they see that the registered owner is a trust and not a LLC, they're probably going to think twice as to who is the actual owner of that vehicle. And they won't know that you're necessarily using it for ride sharing. So then when I create it in the trust, then I have the trust owned by the limited liability company. So that's my asset protection hook there. So by having the personal property trust owned by the LLC, which means we're going to make it the beneficiary now, no one's going to see that this relationship exists. That means these individuals down here. Why? Because that personal property trust is a private document, the assignment you make. So when you originally set it up, you're the beneficiary under the personal property trust. Then you transfer your interest to the LLC, or what we call assign the interest over to the LLC. So those documents, they're not on title or public record. No one's going to see your trust. No one's going to see the assignment. The only thing that they see, if they were to look on title of this vehicle, is that it's registered under the trust name. Now, if something goes wrong, someone's hurt, they come after the trust, and that drops them down into the LLC because the LLC is the beneficiary, and you're going to be protected. So if you're into Turo ride sharing, there is an issue there for you in structuring your business right now if you don't own the vehicle outright. And that is the lenders and the leasing companies are really concerned about people who are, basically allowing other individuals to drive the vehicles because the risk goes up for them that something could go wrong. So we have to take every step we can to try to minimize that risk using business entities, but at the same time not screw up our lease arrangement. So be careful on how you structure your deals. If you don't own the car, definitely consider using a trust. In this strategy, it should provide some protection against alerting these guys down here as to what change has been taking place. All right, guys, hey, that was my take on Turo ride sharing. I know it's a little different than what we normally talk about here on this channel as far as real estate's concerned, but I've been getting questions on it. So if you're in the business, great. Thinking about doing a side hustle, here's how you set it up. And if not, well, stay tuned next week. I got another video for you on asset protection for real estate investing. Take care.